Hello and welcome to the Coaching Podcast, coaching for success in sport and business. Your host is Emma Doyle, the energy and high performance under pressure coach who is a world leader in unleashing human potential. Buckle up for this high octane session. Let them have it, coach.
G'day, everybody, and welcome to the Coaching Podcast. I have the pleasure today of interviewing Ben Easter, who's the founder and head coach at Lucid Shift Coaching, where he helps entrepreneurs overcome inner hurdles to gain clarity, confidence, and courage needed to fulfill their potential. We're going to chat about that. We're going to chat about authenticity and so much more. Ben, welcome to the show. And do you prefer summer or winter?
Ooh, great question. I think I'm a winner, baby. Personally, I really, thanks for having me. But yeah, I think I like winter. The sun kind of cooks me, and I think I prefer, like, I live in a place where it rains all winter, so I'm a big fan.
Where are you based?
In outside of Seattle, Washington, in the States.
Oh, fantastic. I've always wanted to go there. I don't know, Grey's Anatomy or something.
Nice,
Push me
yeah.
towards wanting to head there. I think I'm going to be heading there this year. I've got a feeling about that. So
Yeah, it's
a
really
great
beautiful,
feeling.
so green, you know?
Yeah, cool. Well, speaking of green, let's go there first. Let's talk about the word lucid. You know, like
Yeah.
what came to mind when you just said green just is in terms of nature, you know, when everything's green and popping and when you have that mindset shift. So the word lucid, what does it mean to you? And how did you come up with that as your business name?
Yeah, yeah, great. I'm so glad you asked, because nobody ever asks, and you spend so much time going over with your business name. You think about it so hard, you know? So for me, so lucid is about clarity and also about light. And then shift is about the kind of mind shifts that happen. And so the name of the business is about, like, the kind of shifts that we can have in our business and our life just from looking at things differently. So just from having new clarity and having lights shined on different areas. There's a metaphor that I use with a lot of my clients where I talk about, reality being kind of like a dark attic, for example, where maybe in a horror movie and there's stuff everywhere, there's sheets over things, and you don't really know what's going on in there. And we have like one flashlight, and you can point that flashlight anywhere that you want to, right? But you can only point it at one thing at a time. And whatever thing you're pointing it at, that becomes your whole reality. And so this is like an argument for optimism, for example. But I mean, really, it's about paying attention to where you are directing the flashlight of your mind, so to speak, because it will change the whole reality that you find yourself in.
Fantastic. So let's point a flashlight on you for a moment. I read in your bio about recovering from a traumatic brain injury. I'd love, if you don't mind, going there and just sharing a little bit about that sliding doors moment in your life.
Yeah. Well, I was 19 and I jumped off of a balcony and I landed on the left temporal region of my brain. Broke my brain, woke up in the hospital. And it was just it was a big deal. I didn't realize, the doctors were like, well, you probably won't walk again for 6 months and you'll never be yourself again. And with all the, spit and vinegar of a 19-year-old boy, I was like, you don't tell me, I'll show you, and I'll be in recovery. And so, I was really proud of myself that I was up and walking the next week. And I, 6 months later, I'd considered myself to have made a full recovery. And it wasn't until I was out at dinner with my mom and my grandmother one night. My grandma's, she made like an offhanded comment, sort of kind of like how you've been since your accident. And I was like, what do you mean how I've been since my accident? I made a full recovery. And she's like, no, you have a stutter and you have these big pauses in your conversation and you don't always understand what's being said to you. Like, you don't know this. And I just remember that rocking my world, because I really truly thought that I had made a full recovery. I had no idea that I had this massive blind spot. And this woman that I trust with my whole heart, was sharing from her actual experience of me and just reflecting back to me how I had been since my accident. And it was like a really big turning point, a kind of moment in my reality. And I got super depressed for a long time, because then it's like, the feeling for me was like, you get, when you have spinach in your teeth and you're like, how long have I been walking around with spinach in my teeth? I'm like, oh, so I was really worried talking to anybody. I had this like super social anxiety for a really long time. And I kind of thought I was broken because, it was brain injury. So I really didn't think there was a way out of it until I came across this concept of neuroplasticity and then started thinking about social skills as skills. And that made all the difference. So I was like, you know what, before I seriously considered suicide because I had been so social before that. And I was like, you know what, before that, why don't we at least see if I can redevelop these skills? So I just like set out on a journey to face a lot of fear and social anxiety, go out and like intentionally, deliberately get rejected and a whole bunch of different things, understanding like how to listen for meaning and what was most important to people, and understand who I was as a person and really like find my center and my values and all that stuff. And all of that was part of this journey for me. And that was like really what kicked me into the world of coaching, I think, was going through all that personal development work that I was doing from that head injury.
So why do you coach?
Because it's like that tattoo that you asked about before that we have. I've got this atom on my arm, and it's to remind me that at the smallest level, we're all made of the same stuff. So I should treat other beings the way that I would treat myself. And for me, that's the essence of coaching, is like I get to get on a call with someone else who is just a mirror image to me. And we get to like grow reality. We get to like evolve. And to me, that is just like such a beautiful thing. It's so cool. I can help people make the same kinds of mindset shifts that I have experienced and that I've helped tons of other people experience. And then things get easier. And then like the path gets smoother. And that doesn't, it doesn't mean it's easy necessarily, but it's simple and it's straightforward. And, there's usually a lot to be figured out, but it's just such a beautiful, magical experience to go on that with somebody else. So like have this safe space with trust and, get curious and be on the same side and have there be no wrong answers, that sort of thing. So that's why I coach. I love it.
Well, thank you for sharing all of those things, Ben. There's so many concepts already. We could go down so many different paths with what you've just said. Would
you mind if because I'm also curious, why do you coach? Can I ask?
Of course, please ask. I coach because there is something around harnessing energy and empowering people to see real possibilities beyond what they ever could have imagined. And then bridging that gap is why I coach. And the energy of that is why I do what I do. And I love, even Ben, off air, you asked me what the purpose of the podcast is. Coach for success in sport and business. So whoever's listening out there, whether you're a coach or whether you just want to shift your own mindset, all the principles and practices that we speak about on this show are, and picking up on your language, Ben, are skills. Skills that we can master. So speaking of skills to master, fear of failure. Why do people fail? And what's one practical skill that you could share to help people in that area?
Oh man. So this is a really big topic. It's one of my favorite ones, but just to kind of create a little bit of a framework, I think first, and I think this mental tool is an answer to your question, like a reframing of failure, because we have this word failure, but here's the thing about failure. It only happens, like one thing has to be true for failure to have happened, and that is we have to stop trying. That's the only time that failure can happen. And the thing is, when you label something failure, that means that you've kind of stopped trying at it, right? Be very careful labeling yourself as a failure. That's just not even the kind of statement that's true, right? We're not failures. Attempts at things are failures, right? But then the thing that I think is really interesting, and I love talking about this like with a client or anybody who's going through a skill development, is that there is going to be a period of quote unquote failure where and what that means is you don't yet have the skill. So walking is an example I love to learn or use. Babies learning to walk, they fall over. But would you say that a baby is like a failure at walking because they fall over? It's like, well, no, they just don't have the skill of walking yet, right? They haven't figured it out yet. And part of the reason for that is that you don't have the strength that you need to walk when you're a baby, right? And so what's really interesting is that when you fall over, then you get back up, you like do a squat rep. And so you're actually like getting stronger because you fall over. And it's really obvious to see with babies that we're like getting stronger when we get back up. And then ultimately you're strong enough to walk. But then the cool thing is that we don't learn to walk despite falling over. In a very real, very direct way, we learn to walk because we fall over. And that is magic. And that is, I think, the case for everything, that success is always equal to, it's like a formula. Success is equal to failed attempts plus 1. So as long as you get back up another time, then you're getting stronger, and success is inevitable, bound to be successful, bound to be successful.
+1, everybody. I feel like singing. I get knocked down, but I get up again. +1.
Right on.
Lucky
Right
I'm
on.
a good coach, Ben, because singing not really my thing. So therefore, business success is inevitable. +1.
Yeah, well, as long as we can get back up. So it's a function of effort and time. So we have to have the time to be able to get back up, right? We're getting a celebration. Isn't that nice? Thanks, Zoom. I appreciate the celebration. But it's important that you have the time, because, like, you could conceivably fail, because we have to have stopped trying. That's the thing, right? So, like, conceivably a baby, God forbid, dies before that attempt where they can actually walk. Well, that's a way that failure could happen, right? Now, you won't complain much about it if that's the case, that you died on the way to it, right? Because you'll be dead. But that is, because there can be business failures, but that, we might run out of funding. This is something that happens a lot with, like, startups or whatever. It's like you run out of funding, and then you're not able to keep making those attempts. Right. But if you're able to keep making those attempts and learning from those attempts, getting stronger from every attempt, then success is inevitable. Success is bound to be successful.
I want to stay on the word try. So you've got a client that commits to their accountability work that they need to do, and they come back to you and they say, Ben, I tried, but I didn't do it. I tried. I tried, but I couldn't succeed. What are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. My very first coach in the world was my golf teacher, my golf coach, Andre Panay. If you're listening, you rock. But he used to play this game where he'd be like, try to take this pencil from my hand. And he would just hold it. And I thought, at first I thought it was like a trick, like, so I'm like quickly grabbing it. And he's like, no. You took the pencil. Try to take the pencil. I'm like, what? Like, what? How do I even play this game? I think that's really interesting, and it's really useful. Language is a big thing that I use in my coaching in general, because I think it's important. The reason that language is useful is because it's like the tip of the iceberg that illustrates beliefs that are under the surface. And so, you wouldn't say, I'm going to try to pick up this glass of water. That wouldn't be the way that we would phrase that language. Like, we wouldn't say that, right? Because you say, I'm just going to get the glass of water. You wouldn't say, I'm going to try to drink the water. That's not the language that we use, right? We actually use the word try when we're anticipating that we are going to stop. We're not going to succeed, and we're going to stop doing it afterwards. We're getting a lot of those today, those Zoom things. And so I think it's really useful to be aware of the language that how we're constructing our world, because the language is a big way that we do shine our flashlight in the world. And so if you're finding that you're using, like, the language try, I would get curious. Why are you believing that you're not going to succeed at it?
And what other language hacks do you have for people out there? What are some of the little, quick tips around language?
Oh, so many. I love language is such a beautiful study, but some of my favorite ones, the biggest ones that come up a lot, are like should. Like, I should do that thing. Byron Katie says, when you use the word should, you're arguing with reality. And when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. I think that's a really fun, like, way of remembering that thing.
I always say to stop shooting on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that. And then need to, have to, must. This is language to be on the lookout for. Honestly, there's nothing that you need to do in the world. Not one thing that you need to do. And people might say, oh, well, I need to breathe. Well, only if you want to keep living, right? And so anytime you have a need, it's going to be bounded by some want or some outcome that you're wanting to create in the world. And so, but see, what happens when we're talking about need, it's funny because we use that language to motivate ourselves, right? Like, the purpose of need language is like, oh, I need to do this thing so that we'll be motivated to do it. But it actually works the exact opposite. 3 intrinsic motivators: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. They spell AMP, A-M-P. Drive, the surprising truth behind what motivates us. That's the name of the book. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And so autonomy, we like to be in charge of what we want to be in charge of our lives. Mastery, we like to get better at things. We're intrinsically motivated to get better at things. And purpose, we like to contribute to something larger than ourselves. And you'll find these in any time we have intrinsic motivation, some variation of these. And there have been other studies, they've named these things different ways, but I think that's the essence of them. But look, autonomy, we want to be in charge of what we do. We want to do things from want, right? And anytime we're using need, even though we're doing it to ostensibly to motivate ourselves to do something, it's actually doing the exact opposite of that, because now we're putting an obligation on ourselves instead of freedom on ourselves. So be on the lookout for that need language, and instead give it a shot, replacing need with want or get to. I think these are really useful ways to do it. And I just love being on the lookout for that, because you don't need to do anything. You shouldn't do anything unless you want something, right? It's like an if-then statement, kind of. If I want this thing, then I should, But why not just skip and just say, I want to do the thing, right?
Well, thank you for providing also some solutions. I find often as coaches, we can get stuck in the problems and not offer solutions. So I really appreciate that. Let's go down the road of being authentic. I mean, what does that even mean these days with social media? And is that what's really going on for everyone else out there? And how come I can't be as good as that coach, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, and tricky with the social media stuff, because you have no idea what is happening behind the surface. We're only getting the highlight reel, and the problem is, like, we see our own full movie. You know what I mean? We see the ups and the downs and everything. We get the whole thing, and then we only see the highlight reels from somebody else on social media, and we believe that that's what their life is like, because we don't see the downsides and how they woke up and what they looked like and what they were feeling and all that stuff. And so I think it's useful to just remember that. And also, like, I really like the idea to think of like running our own race, or like, we're in our own lane, so to speak. And you can see like a car passing you in the other lane, and you could tell the story that, oh, they're going to get there before I get there, or they're ahead of me, or something like that. But honestly, you're coming from different places, you're going to different places. Like, it doesn't even really make sense to compare your journey to someone else's, because it's never apples to apples. You cannot possibly. Everybody's experience is as unique as it can possibly be. Now, that uniqueness, that's where we're talking about the authenticity thing. I think it's like really useful to get curious. And I think DNA is a great model for this. We all probably, if you're listening to this, I'm guessing that you recognize that our DNA is unique. We have our own formula, so to speak, for our thing. And what I think is cool about this is our DNA will also in some way determine what we want in the world. So, like, an easy example of this is like the flavors that we enjoy, or the smells that we enjoy, because everybody has different versions of those. And we might have there might be a bell curve where people tend to enjoy the smell of flowers, but then you could imagine people like not liking the smell of a flower, for example. And so I think authenticity is about listening first to our desires and letting those desires govern our reality. And this is where it's really easy to get caught up in other people's desires, because if you don't do this investigation, you don't find out your own way of doing it. If you don't stop to listen to which flowers you like to smell, it's really easy for people to tell you that roses are the best smelling flower in the world. And then you could just take that for granted, right? And then ultimately wind up living a less satisfying life, because you've surrounded yourself with roses, and maybe jasmine is actually your favorite flower, for example, right? And so authenticity starts with like our desires, what we want. You might call them core values. That's something that I do a lot of exploration with clients, is investigating what is meaningful to you as a person. And then from there, designing your life. And that is, I think, what authenticity is like first starting with what you care about, what's important to you, what's meaningful for you, and then designing your life from that place, designing your business from that point, and all that.
So what gets in the way? What stops us?
Oh, I mean, so many things. I think from an early age, some of what stops us is that by the time we're asking these questions of ourselves, or even able to ask these questions of ourselves, we've already had answers told to us by our parents, by our caregivers, by our teachers, by, all the people that we maybe look up to in the world. And so there's movies and all of the outside influences that kind of tell us what's important, that what we should value, there's that should word again. The path that we should take through the world. And if we're not careful, and by the way, we don't have a lot of the tools when we're young to even navigate those questions for ourselves. And so it's really easy to take on other people. So I think that's a thing that gets in the way. I think fear gets in the way, and insecurity gets in the way, because ultimately, like, what if I care about things and I like things, and other people that I care about don't like those things that I like? And then that's risky. That's a risky proposition. I could get rejected from people. You know what I mean? I could not be included And I think that's a scary proposition for people. So I think fear and insecurity can get in the way. Doubt, like I might not believe that I'm able to do the thing. Like I might not believe that it's possible for me to have the world that I want. And so that can get in the way, because why even bother trying? You know, if I told you to push over a mountain, you might give it like one really good shove. But as soon as you convince yourself that it's not possible, you're probably going to stop trying all that hard. You know what I mean? So if you don't believe that the journey is available for you, you probably won't keep going for it, you know?
So on that note, one of the things that our latest sponsor, Heyday.xyz, does really, really well is, of course, takes the AI side of it, takes all of your coaching ideas, so to speak, and helps you with blog posts. Is one thing that I really like about it. I know you use Heyday.xyz /coaches for anyone out there listening who wants to learn more. Check it out. But could you share a little bit about how you use technology to enhance your coaching?
Yeah, totally. Well, so Heyday is a great example, because one of the things that I love about them is that it's just like, it's like a note taker that sits on your calls, but it's a coaching specific note taker. So it's like listening for the challenges that our clients are facing. It's like sending summaries afterwards, like bringing notes. That's all beautiful. It's a really quick way for me to review. But also the other cool thing is, like, so you're asking me these questions like, how do I think about failure, and how do I think about authenticity? And it might not always be obvious for me if I didn't have you here interviewing me, that, you know, asking me those questions, it might not always be obvious to me what questions to ask myself or to think about. And I can just go to Heyday and I can say, hey, what themes have been coming up in my coaching calls lately? You know, what would be useful for me to talk to people about, or to make a podcast about, or to write a blog about, or whatever. And it'll just pull it up, and it'll give me references and all that stuff. So it's really cool. So that's one of the ways I'm a huge fan of tech in general, better living through technology. I always want to like automate things away, make things smoother, focus on the most important, most essential thing. So I use the note taker for sure. Love that. Big fan of the like ChatGPT. You know, I use that. Perplexity. I like to experiment with the different ones, because even though ChatGPT got a lot of, you know, hype in the beginning, Perplexity has like a little bit of a different flavor for that kind of thing. It's nice to be able to like kind of engage in meaningful conversation with something that there's no downsides, like there's no risks to engaging in a conversation with an AI. So I think that's kind of cool. There's all kinds of, you know, email tools. I'm a big fan of Zapier. I love connecting different tools together so that I can do something in one place and have it like create things in another place. So I don't know if that helps. There's tons of, I could go on and on with our tech stack. Is we have, for our coaching company, we have a really huge tech stack, because I'm always practicing stuff and trying different things out. Play with Notion all the time. That's like my go-to lately. I love having Notion as a doc. And anyway, I'll ramble.
Thank you for sharing. So I will go to our guiding question, which is in 1 to a maximum of 3 words. What do you think makes a great coach? And could you provide an example of each of those qualities?
I probably will say safety, connection, and optimism, maybe. Yeah. So I would say safety. An example is like, you know, it's risky to, like I said, we're not talking to AI here. It's risky to, and I think that's part of why we want to coach, is to not be an AI, to be a person who's going to have their own experience and like their own perspective and all that stuff. But to create a safe space where somebody can open up and be held. And, you know, I think it's important. That's why it's really important for me to filter for my clients for values alignment up front, so that we can have that kind of safe space, so that we can be authentic together. So safety, connection, like, listening deeply, and connection in all of its varied meanings. So it's, yes, connecting with the client, but it's also connecting ideas together and helping the client connect ideas together and piece together a bigger part of the puzzle. I think that's really useful, because you might not always see how something in one area of your life is impacting something in another area of your life, for example. And so that's cool. And connecting ideas together can also sometimes create insights in new areas. And then optimism. It's so amazing to me how often a major breakthrough will happen for somebody just because they start to look at what is possible in a different way and believe that something's possible for them. They can like imagine themselves walking a path and then arriving on the other side of it. And until they believe that it's possible, no action happens. And then all of a sudden action becomes like effortless and they're just like flowing. And it's just because they started to believe that it was truly actually possible for them. And so I think that's really cool. Super useful.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And finally, I wanted to ask you one of our new season 6 questions, which is, in the ever-evolving coaching landscape, what disruptive idea do you have that could impact the way we coach in 2030?
In 2030, interesting. Disruptive idea. Oh, man. Okay. All right. So I think this is kind of related to technology, but I think that we're moving in a direction of having sort of an always on AI companion around. Like, we've had Siri and Alexa for a long time, but they're kind of boring. ChatGPT, however, or Perplexity, or all these different tools, they're less boring, but they're just, you have to go to a certain place in order to access those things, right? And so if we had that sort of always on companion, I think that is going to do amazing things for our development as people. And what's really cool about that is then where I'm able to say, query Heyday and ask them like, all right, well, what themes are coming up in my clients' realities? How cool would it be to have something that's like asking you sort of journaling questions, engaging with you in your reality, noticing where you're going in your world. And then you could say like, hey, what are the themes that are showing up in my life right now? Right. And then not only, I mean, you could bring that to your coaching conversations, bring that to your investigation and all that stuff. So I think that could really like help to enhance a coaching relationship. Because I think one of the parts that involves the most sort of work for coaching is preparing for a call and getting yourself set up such that you're like ready to work on the most important thing in your call that is coming up for you right now. And so it would be really cool to have something that's like, hey, these are the things that have been coming up for you lately. Like, which of these is most important? I think that would be a really disruptive technology or way of approaching personal development.
Somebody out there is listening, probably from the software space, go, that's a brilliant idea. Remember, it came from Ben Easter on the Coaching Podcast. That was
go ahead, out of the generosity of your heart, share with me somehow. Yeah, do that.
All right. I just want to finish with the unfiltered approach that you take with your clients when you are that way and you're being your authentic self as a coach. How do you deliver a tough message?
Yeah, great question. And it just came up. I just got off of a call where we debriefed about a tough message. So I think it's really that connection piece is so important, and safety. And both of those two things I think are really important parts of delivering a tough message with love and with permission. So, hey, like, I'm noticing something. You and I have an open agreement that I'm going to challenge your thinking. And also, would it be okay if we talked about this thing right here? Because I'm seeing an opportunity for you to grow, and it might not be the most comfortable thing. Would it be okay for us to have a conversation with love about that thing? And that is, I think, one of the more impactful ways to do it, to just ask for a little bit of permission. And then to do it from a place of empathy. And by that, I mean, like, imagine that it's me going through that. Like, I like to play the game that says, like, look, nobody wakes up and is like, I'm going to figure out a way to fuck up my life. Oh, sorry. Can I swear here? Sorry.
Absolutely.
I'm going to figure out a way to screw up my life today. Like, that's not, nobody wakes up and says that, right? We come by these things honestly. We're always doing the best that we can, given the situation that we have and the tools that we have access to, and that we can see like what possibilities we're even aware of. Right. And so I love to just remember that you come by it honestly. Whatever the thing is that you're going through right now, you come by it honestly. And so to deliver a tough message, I think it's really important for me to remember that they're coming by it honestly, and to just kind of, empathize, identify. If I were in that situation, I'd be doing the exact same thing, because that's the way it works, to have a perspective.
Well, Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure. I feel a little bit lighter. I loved how many times you said, get curious. And we all have our own unique journeys, so we can uncover our blind spots and reframe failure so that we can all stop shooting on ourselves.
Yeah,
with autonomy, mastery, and purpose. It's been just a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate your time. And everyone, please also check out the Shift to Freedom podcast. Would you like to just let our listeners know about your podcast?
Sure. Yeah. The Shift to Freedom podcast is really about the mindset part of business for people and figuring out like, how do we believe it's possible? I sometimes jokingly say my own personal tagline is I trick business owners into believing in themselves more. And so like, that's what the Shift to Freedom podcast is all about, is like, how do we like get out of our own limiting beliefs and see more possibilities and, believe in the inevitability of our outcomes. And so if you want that in your life, come listen to the podcast.
And review our core desires and values so that we can unleash our potential. Thank you so much, Ben, for being on the Coaching Podcast.
Thank you, Emma. It was great talking to you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. G'day, fellow business coaches. I thought this would be an opportune time to let you know about our latest sponsor, heyday.xyz/coaches. Now, think about this product as an AI thought partner that turns your conversations and notes into quotes and ideas into posts. It is a game changer. If you're anything like me, you don't enjoy the paperwork, you prefer to be present during your coaching sessions rather than busily having to take notes, this really is the future of coaching efficiency. So please check out heyday.xyz/coaches
and enjoy your coaching.